You are listening to Housekeeper's Chat by the United States Department of Agriculture from 1926. Disclaimer: this is read from a historic archived document. Do not assume content reflects current scientific knowledge, policies, or practices. This broadcast was recorded 17th of December 1926.
Aunt Sammy's correspondence is growing. She has received a letter from a mere man who presumes to tell the housewives how to keep house. Some of his suggestions are so good that Aunt Sammy feels obliged to pass them along.
You see what has happened now. It was inevitable, I suppose, from the start. All these days I've been addressing my women friends, blissfully unaware that the men, by the most remote happen chance, might be represented in the fold. Nevertheless, one man has been listening in to almost every program. I have his word for it, in black and white. He has written me a long letter, making a number of suggestions for us housewives. I will read you his letter. Any man who has listened in to my programs deserves some consideration. I am sure, from the tone of his letter, that he does considerable housework and has a big family. His experience should be worth something. Most of his suggestions are really very good. Others, well, I'll read his letter and then you and I will give him a little advice. Here is his letter, exactly as I received it.
Dear Aunt Sammy, I am not an old man, neither am I a young one. Therefore, this is not a mash note. I must honestly say, however, that I do have a great deal of respect for the work you are doing. I am writing you this letter with the sole idea of contributing something to your programs. Although I'm going to sign this letter Grandma, I want you to know that I have the responsibility of raising a family, and in addition do an 8-hour day, D-man's work. First, I want to tell you about my pet system of washing dishes. You'll have to admit that it is sanitary and saves a good deal of time. I never use dish pans, soap, or dish towel. Simply clear the dishes, stack them on the sink, turn on the hot water spigot, and with a clean rag wash the dishes under the running water, putting them in a pan, where they dry themselves while hot. Both operations are done in one, and more swiftly than the dishes could be washed in a pan of soapy warm water, which generally becomes polluted before all the dishes are washed. I'm sorry I can't demonstrate this, but just try it sometime. Another thing, and here's where I hear you laugh. The idea of a man trying to tell a woman how to fry eggs. But you'll have to admit there are fried eggs, and again there are fried eggs. To my own taste, and to a great many other people to whom I have served them, there is no flavor which quite equals slightly scorched fried eggs. Not burned, you understand, but just slightly scorched, by frying with a very hot flame. Try it yourself, Aunt Sammy, and if you approve, pass the idea along. Another thing is toast, one of my regular standbys for breakfast. Use different kinds of bread, raisin bread, whole wheat bread. Use thin bread, toasted on one side, thicker slices toasted on both sides. Vary the style of toasting and the kind of bread, and there will always be plenty of customers around the table, greedy for their toast and marmalade in the morning. Here's another thing I haven't heard you mention. Have your coffee ground fresh each time you buy. It's the surest way I know to guarantee the quality of the morning's coffee. And while we're on the subject of breakfast, I want you to know that my regular customers line up in the kitchen every morning for their drink of cold water before breakfast. And now I'm going to tell you just what prompted me to write this letter. For the last 3 winters, our morning cereal has consisted of cracked wheat. You'd be surprised how inexpensive it is, how well it wears, if you permit that expression, and how good it is. I soak it 24 hours ahead of time, then I cook it in the evening, let it stand overnight, and heat it again in the morning. There's one joker. Pardon me, I should have said, there is just one fly in the ointment. No, that isn't right. It certainly is unhandy talking to ladies. I meant to say there's just one difficulty. You can't always get the cracked wheat easily. Sometimes we use the whole wheat and soak it longer. I have to smile when I think of a man offering housewives suggestions, but it's really not such a big laugh when you realize that it's another point of view. And I am frank to say that I believe the women could give the men some good pointers about their business, too. Setting the table for a large family on a small salary is my greatest problem. Half a dozen hungry mouths take just about so much food each day, which makes it necessary for me to stretch the dollars to the limit. Cornbread is cheap. My boys and girls like fried mush, as well as milk and mush, and I serve it frequently. Baked beans is another standby. When I use the oven, I always pile in plenty of Irish potatoes. I buy them, as well as sweet potatoes and apples by the bushel. Another thing, Aunt Sammy, when I find a good value in some staple goods I buy in large quantities, my pantry looks like a vest pocket edition of a grocery store. Besides being handy, it gives you that comfortable feeling, as a squirrel must have after it has stored a valuable supply of nuts. The most important thing in my kitchen, with the exception of the stove and sink and cupboard, is a blackboard, where I post articles that are running low, and items that I might otherwise forget to shop for. That was its original purpose, at any rate, but lately it has become a bulletin board. To save answering questions, I write on it when the big event is going to take place each evening, and some of the headline attractions. Sometimes I give the entire menu, and then after dinner I post the names of the cleanup squad. The blackboard is almost as much fun as the radio. Well, it's time for dinner. Goodbye, Aunt Sammy. Give my regards to Brother Sam, and many, many thanks for all the helpful hints you have given me during the past 2 months. Sincerely, Grandma. Postscript. If anything comes of all this, you'll hear from me again. Merry Christmas.
Same to you, Grandma. And thank you for the kind things you said about the programs. Most of your ideas are excellent. For instance, your suggestion that coffee should be ground fresh each time it's purchased, and your plan for having each member of the family drink water before breakfast. Your dishwashing scheme has several good points. I like your system in scraping and stacking the dishes, and your way of rinsing them in hot water so you won't have to wipe them. When it comes to leaving out the soap, in dishwashing, I differ with you. Dishes covered with mutton fat, beef fat, and many other foods simply can't be cleaned without soap, and plenty of hot water too. Washing dishes in running hot water is all right if you have an enormous tank of hot water to draw on, and a quick way of heating more. The cost must be considered too. Most of us have to think about conserving hot water, so there will be plenty for baths, as well as all kitchen uses. If you like your fried eggs a little scorched, scorch them a little. Every man to his own taste, as the French say. However, I think you mean brown and crisp rather than scorched. I like your suggestion about buying staple goods in large quantities. Your kitchen blackboard idea is excellent. A slate or a big pad of cheap paper serves the same purpose. Believe I'll get a blackboard, though, for my kitchen. Now, Grandma, I've said a number of nice things about your housekeeping. May I do a little constructive criticizing? You write, for the last 3 winters, our morning cereal has consisted of cracked wheat. I'm not opposed to cracked wheat, understand. I like it. But don't you ever get tired of eating cracked wheat for breakfast? Wouldn't your family appreciate a change of cereal, rice or oatmeal or hominy grits or some of the prepared breakfast foods? I gather from your letter that your breakfasts always consist of fried eggs, toast, and cracked wheat in the wintertime. If I were you, I would serve fruit, too. Baked apples or applesauce, canned fruits, and stewed dried fruits. Stewed prunes, stewed peaches, stewed apricots, stewed figs are good for breakfast. Oranges, bananas, grapes, grapefruit, any kind of fresh fruit may be used in season. Fried apples and thin slices of ham, served with hot biscuits and a beverage, make an appetizing breakfast. I'm going to send you a radio cookbook, Grandma. It has a number of breakfast menus, and if you have any more suggestions about keeping house, I shall be very glad to hear. We women are always looking for better methods of keeping house. Sometimes I suspect that men are more systematic and more efficient than women, or at any rate, they think they are, which amounts to the same thing. We might offer to change places sometime with the men who talk this efficiency idea. A few days on a steady job of housekeeping might change the point of view considerably. We will have to admit, however, that men can always get their work done up in a hurry when they want to get off for a ball game or go hunting. Does that prove they're more efficient, or does it prove something else?
This broadcast was researched and produced by BreakAway Empire LLC.